I used to speak at a lot of precious metals conferences. I don't as much anymore because I've been speaking more at crypto conferences. I'll get into that. And I know a lot of gold people don't really like crypto, and I'll get into why you should. At the Dollar Vigilante, we still recommend heavy ownership of precious metals. It's about 50, 60% of our portfolio, whereas cryptos are only about 10 or 15%. So definitely highly pro-precious metals, but it's been very, very quiet since about 2011. And I was kind of wondering what the mood would be like here, because I get the sense that most people are just giving up on precious metals. That's the sense that I get. And it's actually been shocking to me to see in such a short period of time, because back in 2011, of course, with gold hitting nearly 2,000, silver around 50, everyone was talking about precious metals. And when I brought up Bitcoin at around $3, by the way, it's currently $6,000, and people would like boo me out of the room. I even had one. I didn't do it at your conference, Kerry, but I did one in Canada, and my speech topic in 2012-ish was bullion, Bitcoin, and bullets, the anarchist handbook to surviving the coming collapse. And people liked the bullion and bullets parts, but they didn't like the Bitcoin part. And what a shift in the last few years. I actually can't believe it. It's gone the entire other way in the last year or two, to the point where I did a video on YouTube in December of 2017, so just less than a year ago, about, what is that? Oh, man, time flies, 10 months ago. And Bitcoin was just hitting 20,000. It actually hit 20,000 the next day, and that was its all-time peak, and it's been going down since then. And I did a video suggesting that people take profits from crypto and get into precious metals, and I was shocked at the response. The entire YouTube comment list, and there's hundreds and even thousands of them, were all saying I was insane, that gold and silver were worthless, that cryptos were going to $1 million. This is what happens at the peak of markets and at the trough of markets as well. And I was absolutely shocked that that was the case. But I always say what I feel and what I mean, and I actually did it myself. I sold a large amount of the cryptos in December, January at the peak, and put a lot into precious metals, which has saved me a lot, because precious metals, while they've gone down a little bit, nothing like the crypto. The crypto market as a whole is probably down about 80%. Bitcoin from 20 to 6,000. I can't do the math in my head because I was forced into 12 years of government indoctrination camps, but so I didn't really learn how to do anything there. But I think that's, what's that, 20 to 6? Someone here is good with math, probably 70%, something like that. I told you I was forced for 12 years into prison camps as a child, so it's tough for me to do any of that stuff in my head. So it's really interesting for me to see how negative the precious metals market is, especially in line of that in the last 20 years, gold, I'm not sure about silver, but gold has outperformed pretty much every other major asset class in the world. It's averaged about, I've got some of the numbers here. In the last 20 years, annualized returns, gold is about 7.82% per year. Of course, back in 20 years ago, gold was around $200. Stocks have averaged 7.2%, bonds 4.9%. Yet, when you talk to any investor, pretty much anywhere in the world, except for at a conference like this, they wouldn't even consider gold. It's amazing how they've hidden what's actually going on to the public. And of course, if you watch, and I pointed out how television programming is called programming for a reason, it's literally propaganda and brainwashing and mind control. It's literally hypnosis. That if you watch CNBC, for example, or things like that, when do they ever bring up precious metals? Never. It's been the best performing asset, crypto aside, of course, since in the last 20 years. So the fact that they've managed to get the public to just not be aware of what's actually going on and not be aware of the opportunities, especially at a time where, as the last speaker just mentioned, just how out of whack and how out of line everything else is. We've got stock markets at bubble peaks, again, which is exactly what happened during 2008. We're basically reaching another 2008 level right now. We have massive amounts of debt. 2008, a lot of people were wondering if that was going to be the end of this entire financial and monetary system, and it was very, very close. They only really decided that what they were going to do from that point forward was to lower interest rates basically to zero, which we've basically been in since then. So almost 10 years of near zero. It's 1 or 2% now, but really near zero. And we actually went into negative interest rates, which I never thought was possible. That's how crazy the system is, where in Europe, there's numerous countries, I believe Switzerland was one of them, I think Germany and a few others, where they were actually selling 30-year bonds where you would loan your currency to the government for 30 years, and in 30 years, you'll get back less than what you loaned them. And I never thought that was possible. It's amazing what you can do in these sort of situations. Of course, all these fiat currencies won't exist in 30 years. In fact, in 3 years is pretty flip a coin. When I started the Dollar Vigilante in 2010, I said that by the end of this decade, so by 2020, all fiat currencies will collapse. And I think we're still on track for that. I know we're getting closer now, definitely a lot closer. You know, if we say the end of 2020, we still have a few more years, but we are very, very close. You just look at the debt. In 2008, the US government had $8 trillion worth of debt. 10 years later, it has 20, you have to actually look it up, like daily now, it's going up so much. It's over $21.5 trillion. I checked it a couple weeks ago. I should check it again because it might be 21.7 now or something along those lines. It's going like this. That's a more than doubling of debt, obviously. It's actually almost getting close to a tripling of debt in about a decade. That's Banana Republic levels. This is the end of the system. A lot of this is actually all by design. The central banksters are always doing these things. What it appears to be that the next sort of level thing will be is during the next collapse, it looks like they're going to try to force everyone into digital currencies, which might be why some people here really don't like crypto, but you have to understand there's two types of crypto. There's real crypto, which the governments can't control, that the central banks can't inflate, that they can't do anything with, they can't seize it, they can't do anything, you actually become your own bank. Or there's, as the last speaker spoke about, government cryptos, which aren't even cryptos, they're just digital currencies, which they will force everyone into. We've seen this war on cash going on now for years. They really went heavy on it. They do experiments. This is all top-down control plan. That's what central banking is at its core anyway, is communism. It's a tenet of communism. It's central planning of the economy and of the money system. So the people, and I'm not talking about Ben Bernanke, I'm not talking about Janet Yellen. These people are just puppets, just the same way Barack Obama or Donald Trump or Bill Clinton, they're all just puppets. They speak in front of the cameras, but there's people behind, and this is starting, people are starting to wake up to this now, and some people are calling it the deep state or whatever you want to call it. There's people behind the scenes that are doing all these things, and they know exactly what they're doing. So when people out there say things like, oh, these central banks aren't very smart, if they were smart, they would raise interest rates a little bit, it would really make things work a lot better. They don't care what works better for you. They could not care less. In fact, they want to destroy you. This is what they want, and this has been a long-term plan. This has been going on for centuries. It's amazing it's gone on this far. Thank goodness now we have the internet so we can actually spread this information. Before the internet, hardly anyone even knew what the Federal Reserve was. I only found out myself personally after my internet company collapsed in 2000, after the tech bubble collapsed. My partner, our company went from $240 million down to basically zero overnight. And I was like, whoa, what happened? My partner jumped out of an 8-story window and tried to kill himself. He survived, was in the hospital for about 6 months. When he got out, he came over to my place on crutches with this big book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. And he just said, read this, and he left. And I was like, whoa, spent a few days reading. I was like, wait, they don't tell us this in the government indoctrination camps. This isn't on television. What they've actually been doing now for centuries is complete and total control of the money system. And they have no intention, no designs on helping anyone but themselves. And the next stage of this will be to put everyone into digital currencies. This is why they're getting rid of fiat currencies. We're starting, I've been shocked. I'm constantly shocked. You know, it's amazing. A lot of people say I'm very forward-thinking or things like that. I hear that quite a bit. I've been shocked how fast all this stuff's happening. I travel a lot. I was just in Hong Kong yesterday. 2 days before that, I was in Japan just before the most recent typhoon. And I've probably been in about 20 countries in the last couple months. And almost everywhere I go, when you try to use fiat cash to pay for anything, it's usually met with really weird looks, like, oh, there's still a few people who do that because we're all using these cards now, all the cards with the chip. And it's just very, very quickly they're moving towards getting rid of fiat currency, and that's all because of control. And what the end game design is, and some people have talked about this, there's even to some extent sort of in the Bible talking about the mark of the beast. This is the plan of the devil. They say in the Bible, that's the way they phrased it, is that they want to essentially put a chip in everyone that will control, they can control everything you do. Well, welcome to 2018. We're almost there. Try to get around using something without a chip today. Even, for example, even just coming here, I had to ask for permission. I have to fill out all these documents. They want to know everything. I couldn't believe what they're asking for my wife. They wanted to know every single thing about her life. It all goes into a computer database. They track you, passports, all those sort of things. And of course, if you look back at how this all happened, it was only in 1913 that this all really began. There was central banks before then, but they really had not gotten a ton of traction. It was with the founding of the Federal Reserve on basically Christmas Eve in 1913, which I believe it was Woodrow Wilson was the lead criminal president at that time. He actually came out and said afterwards that he feels really bad. He sold out his country to the banksters, and he did. And that's what happened in 1913, the exact same year that the income tax was instituted in the US. This is not by coincidence. This is all a plan to get to the stage we're at today, and I can't believe it's lasted this long. It's really shocking to me how this has gone on this long. We do have some hope, though. I'll get into that. But it's really amazing how they planned. So 1913, they put in the Federal Reserve. It was actually the third central bank of the U.S. because the first few, there was still some people who kind of had some idea of what was really going on, and they were kicking out the central banks over and over. Finally, in 1913, they got through their third one, the Federal Reserve, and instituted the income tax. And what happened? 1 year later, no coincidence whatsoever, World War I, some archduke got shot, apparently, and millions of people killed each other because they're all under government mind control as well. Government, by the way, is just mind control. Govern, it's all Latin words. Govern is to control. Gubernare is the actual Latin word. Ment, I live in Mexico, mente is mind, it's mind control. And that's all it is. It's people believing that these people have power over you. They only have power over you if you believe it. And many people actually believe it. That's the unfortunate part. And when there's so many people who believe it, they actually create this actual reality where we are all slaves. And that's the state of the world today. So it's really amazing to me to see how quickly they've ramped all this stuff up, and they're really ramping it up now. And the reason they're really doing it fast now is because we're very close to the end of this system. They can't keep this numbers game going much longer. As I pointed out, $21 trillion worth of debt in the US. If you just did the math, basic math, I'll just say 10%. So if interest rates were at 10%, that would be $2 trillion per year in interest payments alone. That's almost the entire taxation is theft. The entire extortion revenue of the US government is about $3 trillion. So every penny almost would have to go to just paying interest on the debt if interest rates were at around 10%. So this system is so close to dead, and the US isn't even the most indebted. Japan is even more indebted on a GDP basis. Of course, GDP is all BS, government propaganda numbers, but this is a decent way to kind of judge where things are at. Japan has something like 300% debt to GDP, so Japan's basically over. The US is over, and then every other country is right around there. Many of them are higher than the US. I didn't look up Australia, didn't have time. It's not that important on the world stage. No offense. How many people live here, like 10 million or something? I don't even know. But, it's not that big, right? So I didn't take the time to look up Australia. But I would not, does anyone know offhand what the debt GDP? 60%? Okay, yeah. So that's actually not bad. That's better than a lot of countries. Most countries are 70 to 100% now, and Japan's more, some are over 100%. If you look at the US now, I actually haven't even looked at, this is how fast the debt's going up. It's got to be over 100% now. Yeah, it is, because the GDP, I think, last I looked was 16, 17 trillion or something. So yeah, well over 100% in the US. So these things are over. They've been running this 0% or close to 0% interest rates now for nearly 10 years. This is resulting in massive amounts of inflation. The last speaker talked about property prices here, and that's happening all over the place. This is basically 2008 happening all over again, but even bigger this time, and this is what's going to happen. And as I pointed out in 2008, it was very close to the end of this entire system. For a few days, all transportation of even things like food stopped in 2008 because no one knew which banks were actually liquid. Basically, the whole system was done, but they decided that what they're going to do is what they've done, which is just print a ton of money and really lull people into a sense of, oh, I guess everything's going to be okay and it's going to be okay forever. And that's really, I really get that sense in the last couple of years that even people who had beliefs like me that this system's very close to the end have almost started to give up. They're like, well, maybe they can just print money forever. Maybe they can just keep interest rates at 0% forever and everything will be fine. No, they can't. It's just a matter of time. These numbers just get to the point where it's just not possible to even continue on. And that's essentially where we're at. Now, it might be this year still. It could still happen this year. In fact, October is usually the month where they, on purpose, usually pull out the rug from the markets. Of course, the 1987 Black Monday was in October. Great Depression started in October. It's actually because they usually do things on certain dates. It's sort of a Jewish sort of a thing. It's usually around the time of something called the Shemitah, the Jubilee. It's all very, they've got these very, they're very into numerology, very into things like that. And they do certain things on certain dates. Because they believe it'll be bigger or whatever their beliefs are. I actually don't fully understand what they believe, but it's quite nefarious for the most part. And so we could see it even this October. If we don't, though, it's going to happen soon. It's going to happen in the next couple of years. This is not going to go on for 5 or 10 more years. It's not possible. It's just look at the numbers. It's impossible. We're starting to see just the inflation. It's amazing to me how hidden you can have inflation. You have people in the U.S. paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to go for 4 more years of basically propaganda and government indoctrination and get a useless piece of paper that will never get them any sort of job of any sort of value. You can't even get a job at McDonald's now without, with a Bachelor of Arts degree. And now they're going to replace them all with touch screens anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But you have people who are like, oh, there's not that much inflation. Hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to a useless college. No one notices that used to be like $1,000 or $5,000. Of course, real estate prices, just the prices of a lot of things. It's amazing how people just don't really even see it. It's truly mind control. And it's not just the government mind control of them making people believe that they own them, but it's also the mainstream propaganda, which really works. It's amazing. It literally, if you look at it, and I could go into that, but it's literally hypnosis. All the things they flash on the screen is to put you into a state of trance. It's to open your mind up to inserting their view of things, and that's what happens. So you see a lot of people, they're sitting there watching the TV, they're eating something, you just see them, they're like, they're in a trance. It's hypnosis. It's on purpose. You look back at all the old patents, it was all on purpose. They actually even do the frequency of it. It's the most easily amenable to enter into your mind. In fact, entertainment means to enter your mind, right? And so that's what they do. And speaking about other meanings of words, there's another word that people use for things like money, and that's currency. And that's actually on purpose as well. Currency, when you think about what is a current? Electricity, right? It's a transfer of energy. That's exactly what actually money is. And they've known this for a long time. And they know it was actually the first Rothschild in the 1800s, I believe, who said, I care not who makes the laws, I care who controls the money, and I control the money. They knew way back then, if you control the money, you control most things that happen in this world. It's pretty amazing how true that is. If you control the money, you can pretty much control almost everything. And it's unfortunate, and it's because people are very, for whatever reason, they're very amenable to doing things for money. Just as an example, I've seen this myself personally numerous times. I'll have a person who works for me, and he'll be all great, and we'll be all friends, and I'll be like, hey, sorry, this thing that the area you're working in isn't working out, I'm going to let you go. And all of a sudden, this person's all over the internet saying what a jerk I am and all this sort of stuff. Well, what happened? It's because I wasn't giving him currency anymore, and so now he was going to do something against me or something like that. This is all quite psychological, what people do. But really, money is currency, and you really can control the world. And that's how they control all the governments. So it's really the central banks who control the governments. It's not vice versa. It's not what they say. Pretty much anything you've been taught in school or heard on television is a lie. That is a fact. So if you're coming from the standpoint that you think what you've taught in school or what you see on TV is true, you're basically living not in a reality. And really by controlling the currency, they can control everything. And so luckily, and this gets to a bit of a positive part of this, is to me the real thing that broke the hold of these people over most of humanity for the first time was the internet. And I remember when I first, I was actually on computers well before the internet. My first computer was an Apple II Plus clone from Vietnam because we couldn't afford an Apple II Plus, our family. We had to order it from Vietnam and solder it together ourselves, and I was on computers since that age. And I remember thinking, even when I was 13, 14, if they can just link up all these computers, this will end all wars, this will change the world. I even knew that as a kid. It was just I didn't know anything about economics, I didn't know anything about politics. I just knew if people could communicate, it would change the world. And it really has. Kind of sadly, most of those people out there that you see on the subways and stuff like that, on their phones, aren't looking up information, they're looking at cat photos and sending pictures of their food to their friends. Sort of unfortunate that a lot of people haven't really realized. Do you realize in this thing you have all information that's ever been known in the history of the world, and actually most things that you've never been told because it's all hidden? I guess most people don't care, but these people have been under government attack now for decades. When you think about it, even the government indoctrination camps, those are made to destroy you, to destroy all will to learn out of you, to make you learn to memorize. That's what all the buzzers are for. It's basically very Pavlovian. The entire system of education, which isn't even education, it's basically indoctrination, all comes from the Prussian system, and it was basically to make soldiers and factory workers, and that's what it's still there to do today. You hear the buzzer, you can go to the washroom, show up at 9 o'clock, memorize what we say, leave. That's not education, obviously, that's indoctrination, but that's essentially how they control so much, and that's why so many people have been so destroyed. A big part of it is that 12 years, that's a long time to be in prison as a kid. Getting beat up every day. I don't know what happens here in Australia, but in Canada, I'd basically walk a mile in the snow. I know you don't have that as much here. And get there and get beat up all day and be told to memorize a bunch of fake information about how great the Canadian government is and how great communism is for about 12 years, and then walk back home. So, but thanks to the internet, if people want, they actually can find the real information now. And this is actually starting to change the world finally. As I pointed out, not many people even knew what the Federal Reserve was, including myself, even 15 years ago. Now, a lot of people are starting to figure out what it is. And it's amazing, too, how they hide it in plain sight. If anyone's ever seen a US $1 bill, you turn it over, there's a pyramid with an all-seeing eye on it, and if you connect a pentagram over it, it spells out Mason. 99.9% of Americans have never noticed it. It's mind control. It's amazing, and they're so good at it. But thanks to the internet, people are starting to at least have the chance to get access to information. And then the second biggest thing that happened since the internet, in my opinion, is cryptocurrencies. For the first time, we have the ability to transact outside of the governmental central banking system. We have the opportunity to own a currency which no one else can take from us unless they know the password, and unless they know the password, they cannot take it from you. So it's not like having money at a bank. And these currencies as well they're a fixed, limited amount of supply. That's the real key to money. That's why gold and silver were so important as money for thousands and thousands of years, because their supply stayed generally, roughly, in a constant amount, except for a few discoveries every now and then, which I'm sure a lot of you guys know about who are really precious metals guys. But in general, that's why precious metals were such a good money, and still could be a good money. It's not really money today because people don't use it as money, but it can be an excellent money because it's limited in supply. Now, the real issue between precious metals and currencies Actually, I have a quote here. I want to read this. You guys probably won't like this. I actually don't mind pissing off audiences, by the way. But I hope you take it the right way, because I don't mean anything bad by this. But this is my partner, Ed Bugos. He said, "The only thing dumber than a gold bug hating on crypto is a crypto nerd hating on gold. Wake up, idiots. They're both on your side." That's from my partner. So the meaning of it is, there's a lot of gold people who hate crypto. And weirdly enough, there's a lot of crypto people who hate gold. It's the same, it's complementary, it's not conflictory. They both serve the same purpose of helping us to get outside of these governmental and central bank systems. And these systems, as I've mentioned, are going down. So the fact that we have the ability to do this now is amazing. Bitcoin was founded at the height of the 2008 financial crisis. Basically, the white paper came out in 2009. And amazing timing. It gave us the opportunity to have ways to protect ourselves and save ourselves from outside. And when these systems collapse, and when they force everyone into these digital systems, where a person like myself, and I can pretty much guarantee you this, once we get to this point in a couple years, when they have everything in digital, you can't transact outside the system. I won't be able to fly anywhere. I won't be able to do anything, really, except for if people accept cryptos. That's my only chance. And gold and silver, of course. But here's one of the differences between precious metals and cryptos is precious metals are hard. So if I do have precious metals. I definitely have quite a bit. If I want to buy something in China with it, that's quite the tough thing to do. Try sending some gold to China. With the governments today, they're all just rapacious mafias. And probably one of the most, and the last speaker brought up Venezuela. I've been seeing reports out on Twitter that a few people have been trying to leave Venezuela just recently. I was just there, by the way, about a year ago. I've been there a couple times. I wanted to really go and see what real hyperinflation looks like, and yeah, it's pretty bad. You have to bring a backpack. This is a year ago. Now you have to, probably a wheelbarrow probably wouldn't buy you lunch. But a year ago, it was about a backpack of money. You could buy lunch. And but apparently, a few families of Venezuela who had a bit of assets left after all the communism and socialism, and there's a few people who still had a bit of assets. They were trying to leave the country with gold and silver, and the government was checking everyone and found it and just took it. And so that's one of the big differences that, to me, is really important about cryptos, is no one, unless you torture me and make me give you the keys, and that is possible in Guantanamo Bay. These things do happen. But really, it's very difficult for someone to get my crypto. They would have a very hard time. And of course, there's so many ways I could set it up that I could have ways that even if they tortured me, they couldn't get it. And actually, I do those things. So anyone watching who wants to kidnap me and torture me, it's not that easy. You can go ahead and try, though. I've got security. We'll have some fun. So the cryptos and the precious metals are really complementary. And I don't know if everyone here is going to be staying until, I guess today's, what day? I have no idea. Today's Wednesday. So this goes on tomorrow. And then on Friday, there's a cryptocurrency event here. And I'm really excited about it. I actually just looked into it and saw some of the speakers, some great speakers, Valtoro and numerous others. If you haven't ever looked into it, I would highly advise you just at least look into it. And this is what I said in 2011 when I was here last, and I'm going to say it again. It gives you some options. And one of the great things about the cryptos now is there's a lot of people starting to back some cryptos with precious metals. That's perfect. What more perfect thing could it be to have precious metals in vaults, whether it be, I wouldn't, I prefer private vaults over government vaults, obviously, but everything has risk. There's a lot of gold people know this. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. And that's really where the cryptos come in. But there's a lot of people coming up with ways to back cryptos with precious metals, which I think is fantastic and awesome. And that will actually make it so we can use our precious metals to transact more and more easily. Because as I pointed out, just sending someone a bar of gold to China to buy something is probably not even possible, as far as I know, with all the government regulations and rules, and they're going to extort you at some level and probably seize it at some point. But when you have the crypto aspect to it. So the crypto is really an important facet to precious metals, in my opinion. Some of the people that, I've been shocked. There's a lot of crypto, not a lot, there's some crypto people who actually say gold and silver are dead, crypto is the new gold and silver. No, it's not. It's complementary. there's value in both of them. For example, cryptos are only about 10 years old, less than 10 years old. Really, from the time that anyone even found out about Bitcoin, the earliest that I know of was 2010, just a couple of guys. I found out in 2011. Really, most people didn't even hear about it until 2013, maybe 2015. So we're about like 5 years into crypto, and that's just Bitcoin. And there's all these other new cryptos now. So there's a lot of risk there. And even just in the last month, a bug was found in Bitcoin, which could have enabled someone to inflate the amount of Bitcoin dramatically. So these things happen. These are all open source software projects. There's risk. If the internet goes down, obviously your crypto is going to be very hard to deal with. Some people say you can actually do Bitcoin using a pen and paper and using math, but I don't want to do it. It would take you literally years to transfer one Bitcoin with doing all the numbers on a piece of paper. So those are some of the risks. Of course, when you look at what the governments are saying, they're all trying to censor the internet dramatically now. The good thing is a lot of these cryptos are very, very hard to censor. They're very decentralized. That's the real key to them. But they could also turn off the power. This is totally possible. They've talked about this in Congress. It's called Congress for a reason. It's a con game. And you guys didn't know that? It's actually, yeah, that's why. They talk about the kill switch for the internet all the time. They talk about EMP attacks and how the electrical structure system is failing, probably on purpose. And I think if things get bad enough, they'll probably try to turn off either the internet or the power in major areas. Now, if that happens, your cryptos are screwed, right? So that's one thing. Secondly, as I pointed out, cryptos are brand new. There's going to be tons of problems. And there's been so many people trying to destroy Bitcoin. They've been trying to hack it from the inside now for years. They've actually had some success. That's why there's other things to look at just besides Bitcoin. They're very new. We don't know what's going to happen. As well, they're very volatile. So one of the main things that I like about gold and silver is that it generally doesn't go up or down a lot every day. That's a good thing. When you're talking about holding a lot of your assets in something, you don't want it to be going up or down 50% every day. And that's crypto. It's very small. The total market cap of all cryptos is about $200 billion. Bitcoin itself is, I think, around $100 billion. If you look at the total amount of gold in the world today, and you guys would probably know better than me, I'm not a super expert on gold, but I think it's over $7 trillion. So when you're talking about how big is the crypto market compared to the gold market, crypto is a drop in the bucket. And that's why it's a lot more volatile. It's a very small market. So you could have, and this actually happens, you could have a few Saudi billionaires go, hey, I think something's going on in my country and they're going to put me in jail and take all my money and all this stuff. Maybe I'll buy like $50 billion worth of Bitcoin. Well, that's going to double the price of Bitcoin overnight, and that does happen. And so it doesn't take very much for the markets to move. But that's one of the benefits of gold and silver. And as I pointed out, we have, and I personally have, more in precious metals than I do in crypto. A lot of people make an assumption that because I'm so pro-crypto, I must have forgotten about gold or silver. No, absolutely not. And in fact, I've been really amazed how many people have just given up on precious metals. And, have you guys seen the Mark Dice video where he's in California and he has a Hershey chocolate bar and I think it's like 10-ounce silver bar, and he asked dozens and dozens of people, I'm giving away one of these, which do you want? And everyone took the chocolate bar. They didn't know what the silver was. That's how much on purpose, they've got these people, they don't even know what it is anymore. And that's on purpose. But I'm amazed at how few people are excited about gold and silver right now. I'm actually more excited than I've been probably since 2010-ish or so, for the reason that it's been going down. I heard it went up today. I don't actually check it daily because I don't care. I know I've got gold and silver. I know I'm going to be okay as this goes on. I don't care if it goes up $500 or it goes down $500. I really don't. It's not that important to me. But that said, I know it is important to some people about where they think it might be going. So I did ask our analyst at Bugos for his price predictions. I'll save you, do you guys care about short term? Anyone care about short term? Not too much. Long term is more important? Okay, good. Yeah, me too. He was saying, well, he's basically saying that he thinks we're basically at the bottom right now, and that over the next 3 to 5 years, gold to top 5,000 and silver to top 100. And I actually think that's quite conservative, in my opinion, because 3 to 5 years, I can't imagine where we'll be. There's been so many changes in just the last year. When you're really paying attention to what's going on, politically, economically, monetarily, when I first started the Dollar Vigilante, I've said this a few times, in 2010, I thought, what am I going to talk about every day? There's not that much news happening every day. Now, there's 30 things I see every day, and I have to narrow it down to 1 or 2 to talk about. There's that much stuff happening. So 3 to 5 years, I can't even imagine where we'll be, based on the amount of how fast everything is going now. And this is a fairly to be expected sort of a thing. As we have technology, as people have the ability to transact faster and faster, things will start to speed up. As people have access to information like the internet, we now have the ability with things like Bitcoin. If I had $1 billion, I don't. If I had $1 billion of Bitcoin here, I could hit a button. It could be in China right now in about 2 minutes, cost nothing, and no one could stop it. That's beautiful. That's great. And so to think where gold and silver will be 3 to 5 years from now, I don't care what the price target is. The end price target for gold and silver is that there is no price in dollars. Dollars will not exist. That will happen in possibly the next 3 to 5 years, possibly much sooner than that. No more than 10 years. Like, it's impossible. Not in its current form. In fact, not even 5 years. I'd go that far. Not even 5 years. It's near the end of this system. And people, it's amazing how few people realize what's really going on. We're at the cusp of just massive events that are going to be happening. And your average person thinks everything's fine. Oh, I got some mutual funds, I'll be fine. No, you won't. Those are going to be gone. Even the stock market could be just wiped out, absolutely. So many things could happen. But at the end of the day, really, it's not about money. It's about yourself and taking care of yourself. So for all the people out there who really focus on, I want to make sure I get rich with gold and silver, you can't take it with you. Make sure you take care of yourself. Make sure you love your families. Make sure you actually just enjoy yourself and try to live in the moment more. That's really my advice. Money, I've been rich and poor numerous times. I can't tell the difference if I'm happier or not when I'm richer or poorer. In fact, it seems like when I have less money, I'm a little bit more happy. I don't know why that is exactly. So it's not really about money, but it's about really what's right. And what's right is getting rid of governments and central banks. And we can do that using cryptocurrencies and by sticking with the precious metals. Thank you very much.